He crossed his arms and paused, like he was about to say something profound. But it was already clear, his tone, his expression, the way he positioned his body. This wasn't a conversation, this was a sentencing. I'm sitting across from him in a meeting room overlooking the damp rooftops of South Seattle. Gray day, gray walls, Jason's gray face me manager. His laptop is closed. That means it's not a meeting. It's a discussion. I was taught that if HR isn't in the room, you're still on the ledge. If HR is in the room, you better hold on tight. You're just a little too independent, he finally said, like it might be a compliment. In another context, I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? You do things on your own. You don't wait for alignment. You don't wait for the team. You don't let the process breathe. The process was suffocating in bureaucracy. I just opened a window. See? That's exactly what I mean. I wanted to laugh, or stand up and walk out, or throw my moleskin at him. But I just sat there in silence, neutral face, no defiance, no agreement. This wasn't my first attempt at change. I had pitched a client feedback system using Notion Simple, fast, budget-free. I recruited a test group for an alpha version that wasn't even on the roadmap yet. I designed a custom email onboarding flow overnight because I knew the existing UX was worse than some spam folders. And then they told me, "You're undermining the hierarchy. We have a product team for that." A team that spent 3 weeks debating whether sign-up should be in title case or lowercase. A team that never included me unless they wanted me to take a final look. Everything I did produced results, just not in the direction they were facing. "We appreciate your contributions," Jason said, back on script now. "But it's time to part ways." "Got it," I said. "You'll get a severance package and references. If you'd like, I can even help with your LinkedIn post." I stood up. "No need." He reached out to shake my hand. I just nodded, grabbed my bag, and walked out without looking back. In the elevator, my fingers trembled not from fear but from tension, anger, that familiar sense of being erased from an equation I had helped solve. In the car, I sat without starting the engine. On the passenger seat, an empty cup of corporate coffee. On the lid, the logo of the company I improved every day yet never fit into. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. No bitterness, no sarcasm, just clarity. A voice inside me said, "That was my last corporate coffee. Too independent? Good. Then I'll go it alone." I started the engine and pulled out of the lot, no idea what came next. But I knew one thing. I'd never ask permission to do what's right again. Have you ever watched something you created come to life but without your name on it? That was my everyday reality. Flashback. That 7th floor office in South Lake Union, the team scattered across the open space, coffee cups, wireless headphones, MacBooks. It looked perfect on the surface, but every time a struggling project suddenly came alive, it wasn't magic. It was me staying late with Google Docs, Miro boards, a Zoom mic, and Slack chats where I wrote informal how-to guides, sometimes at 11 p.m. None of those files started with my name. They were always called Presentation Final 5-4, and in the author field, Product Managers. I fixed formatting, hunted down icons by hand, built the logic, the flow. And then I'd hear someone say during the demo, "And as we always say, the client comes first." Sure. There was one project where user retention had dropped to 8%. I suggested segmenting users by behavior and building custom onboarding flows. I wrote the copy myself, designed in Figma, manually plugged it into the CRM. 3 weeks later, retention up to 14%. In the meeting, the CEO said, "Great work, team." Team. That word didn't sting until I realized team meant them. And I was support. At every quarterly review, they told me, "You're such a team player. You're dependable. You're calm." One time, HR Jessica, very nice, very diplomatic, said, "You're a solid team unit, just not a leader. That's not bad. Not everyone is meant to lead." I nodded. But something flipped inside. Because it wasn't the first time not a leader meant invisible. When my initiative was labeled overstepping. When my vision was disruptive to alignment. When my idea was rejected, then accepted word for word from someone else, just later. I sat in that office, surrounded by people who smiled at me in the kitchen, but never tagged me in the docs. And I thought, I'm not a unit. I'm a system. You just failed to detect it. There were nights I walked home in the rain. It's Seattle. Rain's like background music. With my headphones in, listening to Lo-Fi Girl. And in my mind, I'd design interfaces ones that could have been if they just let me build. Not pitch, not convince, not wait, just build. I wasn't angry. I was calm. I didn't dream of being a CEO. I just wanted things to work. But eventually, you realize if you're always the one building, and others just paint the front, you're not just an employee. You're the architect. They just signed the blueprints without your name. That night, after I got fired, I opened an old Dropbox archive. The folder Fixes filled with presentations, redesigns, workflows. The folder Client Insights interviews I conducted myself. The folder Ideas a platform I pitched 3 months ago. And then I created a new one. I called it Independence Alpha. Not for revenge. For me, if I'm a system, then it's time to build one of my own. When they hand you that cardboard box for your personal items, the one with the Amazon logo on the bottom, it feels heavier than anything inside it. I didn't scream, didn't make a scene. I just stood there, watching HR apologize, my manager avoiding eye contact, and some new hire in the corner pretending to focus extra hard on their screen. Then I walked out. Elevator, lobby. And then the street. Rain. Of course, rain. Seattle is a city made for dreaming. But hell to survive in. My rent, $2,200 a month. Utilities? Another $300. And that's not counting insurance, my phone bill, subscriptions, credit cards. No paycheck. No team. Just me. My laptop, and Wi-Fi that, by some miracle, was still on. I got home, set a mug of tea on the windowsill, and powered up my old MacBook. Inside a folder called UX Sketches. I opened it. Scrolled through. Projects I didn't have the bandwidth for. Ideas that didn't fit the sprint. Sketches for SaaS tools onboarding automation. Feedback trackers. Visual editors for sales scripts. They weren't just drafts. They were proof. Proof that I could. That I thought in systems. That I saw what was coming before it came. At first, I just lay there. On the floor, in the hoodie I hadn't washed since last week. Crying. A voice inside me said, "You're not a leader, you were just convenient." But another voice quieter, like static behind the Wi-Fi, whispered, "You've always been an architect. They just never gave you a construction site." So I started from zero. I logged onto Fiverr, created a profile, UX strategy and audit for SaaS. Set the price, $50 per audit. First order a guy from Texas with a god-awful landing page for his CRM. I rewrote the copy, built a click map, redesigned the hero section. He was shocked. Paid me $70. Left 5 stars. Then came Upwork. A client from the UK, then a startup from Toronto, then 2 more back-to-back. I worked nights. Coffee, headphones, Notion in dark mode. And every morning I sent invoices through Stripe. Second week, $850. End of the month, almost $3,000. I paid rent. By myself. But that was just the beginning. A month later, I bought a domain, buildbylauren.com. Site, portfolio, mission, help SaaS teams build products for people, not investors. I didn't write designer. I wrote UX architect, from chaos to clarity. What did it give me? Honestly, the doubt stayed. The panic still showed up now and then. But I learned that being background support isn't a diagnosis. It's a phase, a temporary one. The one that ends the moment you put your name on your own product. And now I did. On every file, every invoice, every piece of feedback. I stopped chasing approval. I chased results. And for the first time, I started to see them. It started with an email that said, "Hey, saw your portfolio. We're a small SaaS team in Austin trying to improve our user flow. Can you help?" Simple. Polite. The sender, Marcus J., head of product at a startup called Client Nest. They were building a B2B tool for real estate agents, lead capture, automated messages, analytics. Their problem? Users were dropping off on screen 2 of the sign-up flow. Bounce rate, 68%. They shared access. And I started digging. Day 1. I broke down the entire flow in Figma, step by step. Where does it hurt? Where does it bore? Where does it confuse? Day 2. I did user interviews, real calls with 3 of their customers. Yep, I paid for Zoom Pro myself. Yep, I found the users myself in their Discord. Day 3. I sent them a 21-page PDF. No fluff, just clarity. Behavior map. UX debt. Proposal to shrink registration from 9 steps to 4. A CAPTCHA alternative that doesn't make you want to quit. Suggestions for email tone. Even a redesigned payment successful email. Then I hit send. 2 hours later, Marcus replied, "Lauren, you're like an undercover agent. Seriously, we have in-house UX, but you went deeper than our whole team has in a year." I read that message 3 times. And for the first time in ages, I smiled. They paid me $950. I invoiced them via Stripe. When the payment hit, I took a screenshot. Named the file. First, real proof PNG. The next day, someone from their partner agency reached out. Then a CTO from another Austin startup. Then a product manager in LA who'd been told, "There's this UX wizard, find her." That's when I knew. I couldn't use my real name. Too many ex-colleagues still sitting on LinkedIn, I didn't want questions. So I chose a pseudonym, Agent UX. It sounded cinematic. But honestly, it was accurate. I was an agent, quiet, precise, no noise, just results. On Fiverr, on Upwork, on my site everywhere now said Agent UX. My tagline was simple. You've got a product, I'll help people actually use it. No fluff, just flow. And then things took off. Client number 2, a platform for managing student applications. $1,200. Client number 3, an edtech startup out of Denver. $2,000 for 2 weeks of work. Client number 4, a marketing agency wanting UI audits of landing pages. $600. 1 month after getting fired for being too independent, what a Vuseg ZV independent. I looked at my income tracker in Notion and couldn't believe my eyes. $9,180. No office. No bosses. No approvals. Just me. A laptop. Wi-Fi. And a truth I no longer had to explain. If people like how you work, they tell others. I wasn't famous. I didn't run a YouTube channel. I didn't even have a solid brand. Just a name, Agent UX, and a reputation. My first client said, "You ask questions no one else does. You don't just design, you think like a founder. You're UX the way it should be, not shiny, just effective." And I thought, this is how a system begins. Not with fanfare, but with trust. They messaged me on LinkedIn. A pre-seed startup from New York. The idea? A fundraising automation platform for nonprofits. Working name Causepilot. The founder, Charles, said, "We need someone who doesn't just draw buttons. We need someone who can help build a system from scratch. Right now, we've only got an investor pitch and some basic API logic." Then he asked, "Can you do it?" I paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then typed, "Yes, but I'll need 1 week to organize a team." That was the truth. I could build it all from scratch. But I finally understood I didn't have to do it alone. That evening, I messaged Jalen. We'd worked together in the past. She was a back-end dev who bosses always overlooked because she was too quiet and not a networker. But she had the kind of mind that didn't just write code, she designed foundations. The kind that never broke a month later. The kind you want when you're building something real. I wrote, Jalen, hey, I've got a client. It's a UX platform for fundraising. I want to build it right system first. Are you in? She replied 6 minutes later, I've been waiting for you to ask. The next day, I made it official. Went to the Washington State Business Licensing Service. Filed for an LLC. Name: Foster Systems. Why Foster? Because I didn't just want to build products. I wanted to nurture people who'd been ignored. People like Jalen. People like me. LLC filing. $200. Address: my tiny Seattle apartment. Email: hello@fostersystems.co. And a one-page Webflow site with a single button. Build what your users will thank you for. We kicked off with whiteboard sessions in Miro. Jalen was working out of Sacramento. I was in the rainy corner of my kitchen. Windowsill cluttered with coffee mugs, headphones, and an old notebook from my last job, the one where I crossed out the company logo and wrote in Sharpie. This time, my rules. In 3 weeks, we mapped UX architecture with 3 access levels: donor, nonprofit, analyst. Built checkout logic with minimum friction. Designed a feedback screen that let donors be thanked personally. Created email templates with A, B copy, and most importantly, a Figma interface that was clear, clean, and functional, not fancy for the sake of it. When we presented the first demo to Charles and his team, they went quiet. Then their CTO said, "This looks like a Series B product, not something still in the idea stage. Payment for Phase 1, $6,200. Invoice issued by Foster Systems, LLC. Contract signed." And for the first time in my life, I said it out loud. I'm the CEO, and yes, I built this from scratch. Outside, still raining. My cat was asleep on the router. And I was staring at our task list in Notion, feeling not joy, but control. I wasn't just a unit on the team anymore. I was a systems architect. Even if for now, the system had only 2 people in it. I was sitting in my small home office, aka my kitchen, with a view of rainy Seattle. The soft glow of the monitor lit up my LinkedIn feed. It was a quiet evening, and I had just sent off another project report for CausePilot. Then a notification popped up. The founding fund behind the platform, Beacon Capital, had posted an update on LinkedIn. They were publicly thanking me for the product launch. A quote from the post read, "We're grateful to Lauren Walker and her team at Foster Systems for their professionalism and execution. Without their work, we wouldn't have achieved this level of success. Real drive and expertise." I read the words again. And again. My hand trembled not from joy, but from a strange sense of relief. A couple hours later, I got a LinkedIn message. It was from Michael, one of my old managers. We'd worked together at the company that let me go. He wrote, "Wow, Lauren, had no idea you went into business. Congrats." I smiled. Typed back, "Didn't go into business. Built one." It wasn't just a play on words. It was the truth. I didn't just leave and try something new. I created. I took ownership. And built a business people actually needed. A few weeks later, during a Zoom call with Charles and the investors, one of them said, "Without Foster Systems, this would have flopped. You're not just UX, you're the bridge between the idea and the market." But that wasn't the moment that hit me most. The real shift came from the team. The people who saw my work and said so. Openly. That's when I realized something. All those limits they once placed on me, too independent. Not a leader. They weren't really about me. They were about their fear of losing control. I just did the work better. Right then, my neighbor knocked on the door holding a bag of cookies. He said, "So you kinda saved that whole project, huh?" I laughed. Looks like it. And you know what? This is just the beginning. That night, I recorded a short video for Instagram. If someone says you're too independent, that's not a flaw, it's an invitation. Make your move. Build what others couldn't. President ever Raven. Make your move. Don't just walk. Run. On your terms. Within hours, the video got dozens of comments. People shared their own stories about fighting for credit, about glass ceilings, about always being the team player. And I knew this wasn't just my story. It was a reflection of millions of stories like mine. That's when it hit me. Results are the best response to doubt. A few months after I'd been let go from the startup, I got an unexpected call. It was Steve, my former department lead. His voice on the phone sounded tense. "Hey, Lauren, look, we're having serious issues with the new platform. Clients are frustrated. It's slow. The interface is confusing. And, well, we remembered some of the work you'd done. We were wondering if maybe you'd be willing to help?" I paused. You know that feeling when you're not sure whether to laugh or cry? Yeah, it was exactly like that. So, you're asking me to fix what you broke? That's one way to put it. By now, I was used to not being credited. My name had been missing from files, decks, and team shoutouts. But suddenly they remembered. Oh, did they? I smiled and said, "Sure, I'll send over a proposal." A few hours later, they received an email with a detailed project scope, timelines, deliverables, and price. $140,000 for 3 months of deep, focused work. Led by my team. Under my terms. Silence. The kind that stretches minutes into hours. Then the phone rang. "Lauren, we're in. Let's move forward." Great, then let's begin. At Foster Systems, we gathered in the shared space me, my dev lead, who'd once been ignored like I was, and 2 designers I trusted. The past and present had just collided inside one project. Funny thing on their internal Slack, messages started appearing. Huge thanks to Lauren, the architect of our UX turnaround. The architect. A title I never got when I worked there. Back then, they called me too independent. Now, they wanted the very person they once tried to quiet. Instead of bitterness, I felt irony. I remembered how, during my dismissal, they told me, "You bypass hierarchy. You take too much initiative." And now, they were asking for exactly that. I even let myself reply to one of the managers with a touch of dry humor. So, you finally realize that initiative isn't a flaw, it's leverage. This wasn't just a contract. It was a quiet, elegant triumph. Proof that even when people don't understand your value, you can still build your own lane. At the end of a long day, as I was shutting down my computer, Steve called again. "Lauren, I can't believe it. You saved us. Thank you." I simply said, "Thanks for the call, and for finally recognizing who actually gets things done." That moment changed something in me. I realized, sometimes your greatest weapon isn't loud ambition, it's quiet capability. The kind that scares people. Until they need it. I was invited to speak on UX Uncensored, a well-known podcast where people talk openly about what really goes on behind the scenes in tech and UX culture. The host kicked things off with a question. "Lauren, in your opinion, why is it still so hard for corporate culture to accept women who are independent and take initiative?" I paused for a second and replied, "When I first started out, I was seen as reliable. The kind of person who got things done, no questions asked. But not as a strategist, not as a leader. Certainly not as someone who could challenge the rules of the game." She asked, "Why do you think that is?" Because when women show initiative, it's often mistaken for defiance. It's seen as a threat, especially when it's direct, visible, unapologetic. People fear losing control. So they try to rein it in or reshape it into something less disruptive. I shared a story from my first company how I was once told I was breaking the hierarchy simply because I made suggestions and took responsibility without waiting for permission. Then she asked, "Did you ever want revenge?" I smiled. No, honestly, I never wanted revenge. What I wanted was scale. Scale? Yeah. I didn't want to tear anything down. I wanted to build something bigger. A system where outcomes matter more than noise. Where people, regardless of gender, age, or title, have a real shot at making change. Where too independent just means capable, and people aren't afraid to call it that. She nodded and followed up. What would you say to women out there who feel overlooked or underestimated? Don't apologize for being driven. Don't shrink to make others comfortable. Take responsibility without waiting to be asked. Your strength isn't just in execution, it's in building systems that actually work. That's not rebellion, that's leadership. At the end of the interview, I said, if you feel unheard, don't wait for permission to change the game. Make the first move. Build your path. Scale doesn't come overnight. But it does come to those who keep going. After the episode aired, I received a flood of messages. From women who started in assistant roles but dreamed of leading. From those exhausted by invisible ceilings and whispered judgments. And I realized this wasn't just my story. It was a reflection of so many others. The email was short. Subject line: interested in UX internship. Sender: Monica, a sophomore from a small college in Spokane. Hi, Lauren. I heard about your company on the podcast. At school, we're taught how to align buttons and format text, but no one teaches us how to think. I've been called too much. Do you take people like me? I read her message and saw my younger self, the 20-year-old with ideas no one wanted, simply because they were mine. That same evening, I wrote back. We don't just take people like you. We exist for people like you. And that's how the Foster Fellowship was born. A UX incubator for women and designers of color who were once told, "You're not experienced enough," or "You're too bold, too emotional, too loud." In the first round, we received 48 applications. We selected 5. Monica from Spokane, a visual artist with a fierce, unapologetic aesthetic, her professor called unfit for the real market. Samira from Sacramento, the first in her family to attend college. Joy, a quiet systems thinker who had always been assigned to support roles, never center stage. They came to our Seattle office for the summer. No coffee runs. No, just shadow the seniors. From day one, they designed real-world UX. For real clients. They were paid. They were trusted. No one told them to tone it down. On the first Monday, I stood in the studio and told them, if anyone's ever called you too much, too bright, too confident, too different, welcome. Here, that's your power. A month later, one of our clients sent this email. Your intern team just delivered the best UX test we've ever seen. We want to work with them again. I printed it out and pinned it to their wall. Then came the phone calls. Former colleagues. Mentors. Even a recruiter from Google. Are you accepting more interns? Can we send someone to shadow your team? Can we invest in your incubator? And I just smiled. Of course. But first, tell me how you feel about 2 independent women. Foster Fellowship became more than a program. It was my answer to a system that loves potential, but fears real power. We weren't training team players. We were building architects. People unafraid to create their own structures. And take up the space they were always told to shrink. I close my laptop. The final slide fades from the screen. The Foster Systems logo, and the words, designed to listen, built to lead. We've just wrapped a demo for one of the biggest accelerators on the West Coast. I wasn't asking for funding. We're already profitable. I was just showing them another way. Our office is now in downtown Seattle. Glass walls, sunlight pouring in, an open space where every corner was built with intention. Nothing flashy, but everything speaks. On one of the walls, in brushed metal letters, it reads, "Independence isn't a flaw, it's a feature. It's not just a slogan. It's a diagnosis of a system that once rejected us." There are 12 people in the room. The ones who started with weekend projects. The ones who once emailed me, "I'm not that experienced, but..." The ones who were told, "You're too independent." Today, they're designers, researchers, PMs, engineers. Not a support team. They are the system. Monica walks by now, a senior UX analyst. On her desk, her name badge reads, "Too curious, too bold, just right." She winks at me. "Did you see the demo feedback? Client said we saved their entire market." I nod, and I remember. There was a time I saved projects too. Only no one noticed. In the hallway hangs an old Trello card. It's the very first one I created after being fired. Written across it in marker. Not revenge, a model. I didn't want to prove them wrong. I wanted to build a space where people like me didn't have to apologize for taking initiative. And now a voice inside me, steady, calm, unapologetic, says, they didn't see a leader in me. So I showed them what the outcome looks like. Someone calls me into the main room. It's time for our team retrospective. I walk not in front, not behind. Right beside them. This isn't my company. This is our system. The kind I always dreamed of working in,